Hello all, it's your good friend Tribalkai here. We are moving into this house at the weekend and I don't have my audio set up and all that, so apologies if this isn't very good audio wise, but it's just the camera and the audio on top of the camera. I don't have anything mic'd up here, but hopefully it's alright. Something has been going on in the Commander sphere which you may have heard about, I dare say, and that is some bans of particularly three main cards is Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt and Dockside. Also Nadu has been banned, which, yeah, I mean that was always going to happen really, wasn't it? So all I've really done is written down some bullet points, and if I jump around all over the place then you'll have to forgive me. So it's not an original idea, but the first thing I've written down is Sol Ring, and the reasoning behind the Mana Crypt ban can also be applied to Sol Ring. Basically, the rules committee said that if you get down Mana Crypt on turn 1, you can then go into a Sol Ring and a Talisman. You can have 5 mana when you untap on turn 2 and you're way ahead of everyone else. And it's like, well, yeah, that's fast mana and that's just how it goes sometimes, I'm afraid, especially if you've decided to sit down at a table where you knew that they were playing Mana Crypt, which I would hope you would know that ahead of time. But the same can be said with Sol Ring, is the point, and they actually acknowledged the not banning of Sol Ring, because while they were talking about fast mana and stuff, not banning Sol Ring is an obvious sore thumb that is going to stand out like crazy. So they actually acknowledged not banning Sol Ring and said that it was because it's an iconic part of the format, which is frankly a crap excuse. Like, if you either care about banning fast mana in the format or you don't, and the cost of the cards, the prices of the cards, I've heard people talking about that might be a factor. That shouldn't come into it. If you're banning cards because they're expensive and used in every deck, then say that. If you're banning fast mana, then ban fast mana. No one's talking about Grim Monolith and Mana Vault, by the way. I don't know, it's the inconsistency. Another thing that people are bringing up a lot is inconsistency, and I'm on board with that. I'm against the bans, by the way, but not necessarily for the individual cards. I don't like the fact that there's just some spurious, arbitrary group of people somewhere that I've never met that get to kind of dictate to the rest of us which cards we can and can't play with, and more importantly, actually affect the availability and prices of our collections. Yeah, I think it's totally wrong, and I don't like that there's just a random group of people that can do that. I think Commander as a format is self-governing, and it should be self-governing, and I've been against the rules committee ever since I've learned they were even a thing, so yeah, this just adds credence to what I already thought, basically. Anyway, I'm going to end up bouncing around all over the place, like I said, because I'm just throwing out ideas as they come to me. Another bullet point that I've written down here, I'll just write or read to you the actual note, and then we'll try and go into a bit more depth with it. Abolish RC, so abolish the rules committee. And then I've written, do you think these cards were planned to be reprinted in sets next year? And the rules committee totally blindsided Wizards as well. And then it seems fairly obvious that they're working alongside Wizards and holding off on ban announcements until Wizards have managed to wring you dry first. It's pretty harsh when I read it out, but yeah, I do kind of stand by that, to be honest. The question a lot of people are asking is why now? Why not? There's been various discussions of fast mana and Dockside Extortionist over the years, so why wait 3 years since the last banning to ban these things? Especially when there's been reprints of Dockside Extortionist in that time, Jeweled Lotus in that time is only for Commander. So talk about Sol Ring being iconic. I think Jeweled Lotus is iconic in Commander now as well, albeit a newer card, but it's literally the only format you can play it in, so it doesn't really get much more iconic than that. It was specially printed for the format. So I can't help but come to the conclusion, judgmental as it might be, and as wrong as I might be, I don't suppose we'll ever know, but I can't help but jump to the conclusion that Wizards were having the rules committee wait on announcing these bans until they could release all these various different reprints of the fast mana and stuff to hold you upside down by your ankles, tip out all the money from your pockets, and then cash you aside and say, right, ban the cards you just bought. Like, it is scummy. It's a real scummy move, that, and whether it was planned by the rules committee or not alongside Wizards, I don't believe for a second that the rules committee don't work alongside Wizards. People always like to jump out and say, oh well, they're totally separate entities and they've nothing to do with each other, and Wizards doesn't have any control over Commander as a format. To which I say, yeah, okay. Like, Mana Crypt's been used as a chase rare in multiple recent sets. Jeweled Lotus was the face of a set in recent sets as well. They've tried to bring the price of Dockside down. It's all these multiple reprintings and using them as chase rares to sell sets to you, and then all of a sudden just banning it out of nowhere, and the money that you might not have spent on that set had you have known this is now money that is long gone, and you're just left with a devalued card or series of cards. I don't like it. It just seems a little bit too convenient with regards to the timing of the bans just being completely out of nowhere. And yeah, we'll see in the next year or 2 or 3 if this is a tactical ban in order to make room for new cards that are coming out. So, like, for instance, maybe you get a 0 mana artifact that's 2-tap sacrifice, or a 0 mana artifact that is tap and sacrifice to add 2 mana for your commander. You know, like a souped up Lotus Petal or something like that. I don't know. I think that they are going to print cards like that as a weird replacement for Mana Crypt, and in order to create new cards as chase rares in the new sets. And only time will tell on that. I obviously don't have any insider information on that, but yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that we are going to start seeing these new types of cards, and the bans now are to make room for what's in the future. But I am just speculating there. We shall soon find out, won't we? So my thoughts on the Rules Committee, I kind of grazed past it before. I don't like people being able to tell a bunch of people what they can and can't play on a format that I feel as though should be self-governing. We can't keep throwing out Rule 0 left, right and centre, and then also, I think Rule 0, which is just the crutch that people love to rely on with regards to these types of discussions, I don't think really coincide well with a banned list. Like, either don't ban any cards and allow me to Rule 0 cards onto a ban list of my own, or the only other option there would be to have a ban list that is in the it is in the best interest of everyone who plays the format. Now the problem is with that is that, and I think that this is what they're aiming for, they're kind of trying to make their own utopia of a format in their own image. The problem is that your version of what's fun for the format and your version of what feels bad and what feels good, and you banning cards to that ilk, isn't necessarily what I agree with, or what the next guy agrees with, or what her over there agrees with. There's tens of thousands, maybe a few hundreds of thousands of people that play Commander, and you don't know what they do and don't want to play with. There's people out there that want balance in CEDH, or want to be able to play with a Black Lotus. Now, I don't think that anyone should have any kind of say over what you do and don't play in a game of Commander. I think if we're going to do the whole Rule 0 thing, then we should sit down at a table with strangers at the card shop or an event or whatever and say, look, I would like to think that we'd all use our common sense and not bring our Black Lotuses and our balances and our winter orbs and things that are banned, things that aren't banned, and really oppress our opponents and ruin the day for everyone. I like to think that we would use our common sense with that. Obviously, there are the socially inept weirdos that don't care about anything other than feeling strong and powerful and winning at all costs, and do just ruin the games for everyone else. And I suppose this is what the ban list is aiming to avoid. But I think it can be just as easily avoided by having the conversation before the game and saying, look, are we playing a bunch of Power 9? Are we playing Mana Crypt? Are we playing Dockside Extortionist? Are we playing these cards that are deemed as really, really powerful? Or are we going to have a nice battlecruiser game of Commander? And I think that is the only real way to go about it, because we can't even decide on what power levels are, let alone deciding on an all-encompassing ban list with the aim of aiming towards what the game should be, but it's not what we want our game to be necessarily, if you get what I mean. It's what the rules committee want the game to be, and it's not even what all the rules committee want it to be. Not all the members of the rules committee agree on every ban. I mean, I imagine it's very rare that it's unanimous, that a ban is made by the rules committee, that a ban is made by the rules committee unanimously by every single member. So if this small group of people can't even agree unanimously, then what makes you think that it's a clever idea to unanimously across the board say that all these people don't get to play with these cards? And then I can already hear you at the back, you're saying, oh, well, you can just rule 0 the card back onto your kitchen table. It's like, yeah, I could rule 0 the card back onto the kitchen table. You don't get to tell me what to do. You do, however, get to dictate the market and control the market with regards to prices and drastically reduce people's collections and their financial value. Now, Magic the Gathering is not an investment. People use the term investment, and I think they kind of use it loosely. I don't think they really mean investment when they say it. Maybe some people do, and it's incorrect that it's a financial investment. It isn't. I wouldn't even trust my money in the reserve list, to be honest. And Magic 30 kind of rattled those cages a little bit. But bans can happen, like the standard players and the modern players and all these guys know about bans already. But this is a ban that kind of, it totally warps the format, and that kind of is the aim of it. But I didn't really know that anyone was clambering for this. I didn't know that anyone was really, really desperate for Mana Crypt to bite the dust, or Dockside Extortionist. Like, for those two cards, there was a little bit of rumblings here and there. It kind of peak and trough throughout the years, but I didn't see a massive movement for it. Like with Golos, when Golos got banned, people were conversing about it for months and months and months. And then obviously they decided to ban Golos because, I mean, God, I don't agree with ban lists, but I can't say that I was disappointed to see the back of Golos, because, God, they're totally devoid of creativity and doing anything new. Constant Golos players. Good God, I was sick of that card. So I can't say that the ban list has never been of any benefit whatsoever. It's just the fact that people want to tell me what to play under the guise of making the format more fun and making it more accessible to new players. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't really get to decide that, I'm afraid. Although I suppose you do, actually. But with regards to the investment thing, it's not a financial investment. It is, however, an investment of your time and your passion and your effort. And so because of that, in exchange, people expect to get some kind of security. I think there should be some kind of security with regards to, if you've got like 80%, 90% of the player base wants to get rid of Mana Crypt, it's just too oppressive. Everyone wants to get rid of Flash. Everyone wants to get rid of Hull Breacher. Then fair enough, there's some kind of security there where we've kind of come to a social consensus. But it seems as though this ban has really divided people down the middle, and it's taken cards away from people that have put a lot of investment into it, not only financially, but with regards to I've spoken to people personally who have like traded for cards and they've now kind of lost out on those cards. It is a trading card game, don't forget. And they put a lot of effort into their decks. Maybe they wouldn't have decided to build a certain deck with a certain commander if they didn't have access to Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt and Dockside and all the rest of it. It's not only the investment in money, which is true and a real factor, but it's the investment of time and passion and effort and wanting to know that if they do decide to play Commander, build a Commander deck, then it is going to be kind of for the long haul, and you're not going to just suddenly have it snatched away from you at the drop of a hat from out of absolutely nowhere. No one saw these bans coming. Like, there wasn't a months long discussion over Jeweled Lotus and how incredibly broken it is and we shouldn't be playing it and Wizards should never have printed it and da. It was just one day, oh yeah, these massive cards from your format are just gone now, so enjoy that. So I think sometimes when people are talking about investment, they're not necessarily talking financially, although that is a certain factor to be had in the conversation. It's your personal investment as well. So yeah, I'm not trying to put words in anyone's mouth, but I kind of take it in a different way when people talk about that. The problem with a ban list like this is that you can't please everyone with it. But it's not like it's like 10 people over here and then there's thousands of people over here that agree with it. It's like you can't please anyone. Like, the majority of cards on the list are all over the place. Like, you've got the Power 9 and stuff, which are like obvious cards to ban. But then there's like cards like Biorhythm and Hull Breacher and Sylvan Primordial and cards like this that a lot of other people think, oh well, I'd actually like to play with those. Flash. They only banned Flash because of the CEDH crowd. I think CEDH should be a separate ban list altogether, or at least a different format so it can deal with that on its own. But that's a different conversation entirely. My point being that you can't please everyone with the ban list, and so surely the aim of the rules committee is to ban cards that it thinks should be banned. But the problem with that is that we're not going to agree on what should be banned. You're telling me what I can play, and I don't think there's anything wrong with these cards, but you do. So now you've got some kind of stranglehold over what I can and can't do. I don't know. I always hear echoing in the back of my head like, oh, Rule Zero, that old crutch that people rely on. But it's like, if we need this Rule Zero crutch all the time in answer to everything, then the Rules Committee and the ban list doesn't work. So why don't we just do your Rule Zero thing without your ban list? That's my philosophy on it. I just don't... The Rules Committee is kind of like a weird middleman that is trying to insert itself and affect the market and affect what people can and can't play. People take these ban lists seriously, even when they're playing with friends, and I don't know, it's just like a weird call to authority. Like, people like the authority of and the status of these California cool kids that get to, you know, they're like the YouTube popular kids, some of them that are popular on there, and people do look up to them and they listen to what they say. And I'm not of that ilk. I don't particularly care where you're from or what your status is, or if you're pals with people at Wizards, or if you're friends with someone on the command zone, or whatever it is. Like, I'm sure they're individually nice people, don't get me wrong, but I don't really buy into all the status and listening to these people just because they've got a title of Rules Committee or Commander Advisory Group or all that. I don't care about any of that. Leave me alone and let me play the cards I want to play, and I'm perfectly capable of sitting down at a table at an event or a card shop with a group of strangers and being able to discuss beforehand which cards you've got in your deck and what kind of game we're going to aim for. And I think it would be better if people just had varying power levels of decks. And so you could say, oh, I run Dockside. Oh, well, I don't really like playing against Dockside. All right, well, I've got a weaker deck here then. and getting a kind of social conversation going like that. It is a social format after all. I don't like this kind of trying to wrangle the format and everyone who plays it, and trying to like herd them into this one utopia that just is never going to work because no one's going to agree on what the ban list should be in the first place. It's a huge mess, and it's never ever going to work because no one will ever be able to agree on what the ban list should be in the first place. So just get rid of it and the rules committee, as far as I'm concerned anyway. Another thing that I've written down here is proxy. I don't see how you can ever go after expensive chase cards ever again. And yeah, it's so scummy, the fact that they reprinted cards and had you chase after cards in sets very, very recently, while the rules committee apparently give 6 to 12 months of talking to Wizards. Like, they're kind of working ahead of time so that they can keep up to date with the sets that are releasing in the future and stuff, and it's all a bit too incestuous for my liking. It's a bit like insider trading, kind of just really sly, undercover type stuff, you know. So the fact that, you know, the Aztec-looking Mana Crypts were being printed and all that, and all the while that all these undercover discussions were being had of, oh well, we can push this card, but it may well be getting banned soon. But don't tell them. Just let them buy the cards and give us loads of money. I couldn't ever encourage anyone to invest. There's that word again. Any more money than like $20, $30 a card ever again, because they can just reprint everything into oblivion to drive the cost down, which is fine, unless you're one of the guys who actually spent money on the card. They can also just turn around and ban a card out of nowhere and do this and totally tank the market. So, yeah, if I played paper, which I don't, I would never ever buy anything for hundreds of dollars ever again. I wouldn't even buy sets at this point. It would be, maybe I'd open the odd box just for fun, but I would probably just buy singles if they were cheap enough, no more than like $20 a pop. And anything that's astronomical, if I wanted to build a powerful deck, for instance, and I wanted a Grim Monolith, or Mana Crypt before that got banned, and Mana Vault is still available, so I would just be proxying those, and I would be encouraging the group to proxy. I'd even offer to print my own proxies for them if they wanted to put them in their decks. Obviously this is dependent on if your play group is okay with it, but yeah, for the most part, I just can't see people really caring about you running proxies unless like 98 cards in your deck is proxies. I mean, as long as they look like Magic the Gathering cards, I wouldn't even care about that personally. But yeah, I can't see anyone really dumping a lot of money into at least singles cards anymore. If you pull one out of a pack, then fair enough. But the buyer and consumer confidence must be gone now, surely. And maybe people will just forget about this in a couple of weeks, and then they'll carry on chasing the new shiny cards. We'll see in a year or two if these new Modern Masters and Commander Masters cards are coming out, and if people get all excited and forget this ever happened, then, well, more fool them, I suppose. But I just can't see myself as a paper player, which I'm not, but if I was, ever chasing any expensive cards ever again, because there's every chance that they'll just make them disappear one day, and yeah, I can't abide that. It's the whole fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you. Is that right? No, it's the other way around. It's the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, isn't it? The only other thing I've put I can't really talk at any length because I don't know anything about it is CEDH. I have vocalised for years now that CEDH should be its own format, and it's not some kind of hateful, like, oh, get rid of those CEDH guys. It's not that. It's that it is a different format. Like, it is a really, really, really competitive format that's totally cutthroat, and it's even so much of a different format that you name it something different, you know. And as soon as this really pushed it home when they banned Flash for the CEDH players, and this just goes back to the whole inconsistency of the rules committee and how their bans just don't make sense. They said when they banned Flash that it was just a once in a lifetime thing, for lack of a better term, and that it was going to be a very, very minute chance that would ever happen again, that they don't want to be banning cards just for CEDH. I actually liked playing Flash casually, and I can't now because of CEDH. So I was never looking to break it, I just thought it was a fun card to play, and now I can't. And you know, it's things like this that just make me want to see not only an abolishing of the ban list altogether, but for CEDH to become its own format, because then we don't have to worry about things like that. CEDH can go off and it has its own problems. It's got Thessa's Oracle combo and all that. You can ban Oracle if you want to. Do whatever you want. It's not an issue of ours. But with regards to this particular ban, with CEDH, it's totally unlocked other decks and totally locked down others. You have decks pretty much being wiped out, and there's a lot of snobbery going on online with a lot of the big content creators that are saying just obnoxious, dismissive stuff like, oh well, if you needed fast mana in your deck, then you shouldn't have had the deck at all, and just your typical obnoxious, dismissive stuff where you would hope that people in those kind of upper echelons of social media in Magic the Gathering would act better than that, but you know, they don't. I just don't like that kind of dismissive behaviour of, oh, people in an entire format, as I see it, are now not able to play an entire deck because every deck slot matters in CEDH, and it's all just a bit too tribal for my liking. Like, oh, I'm on the side of these bans, I don't like these cards, so yeah, to hell with everyone, including those CEDH guys who've just lost thousands of dollars in their deck because they can't play it anymore. Yeah, I maybe I'm just too empathetic for my own good, but I do feel bad for those guys, and I feel bad for anyone who has their collection of these cards, because you've put all this time and effort and money into them, and now someone's just turned around and said no, you know. So it's yeah, it's different for me because I play Magic Online, and I think if you were going to abolish the ban list, which they're not going to do, because it's too powerful and too easy a means of herding people in the direction that's convenient for them, wizards that is, selling you new products. But on Magic Online, if you did have a no ban list room, you'd have to have a ban list room as well, because it's degenerate anyway. Like the pretty much the only players on Magic Online are the tryhards, who are going to have just the spikiest decks you can think of, and they're going to try and win as soon as possible. I was trying to play the new Aminatu Veil Piercer, I think she's called, the other day, and some guy shows up, and this is right after the bans actually, so Magic Online got rid of these cards immediately. Like, you just can't play them within a day of the announcement. But this guy still came along with an Atali deck and hammered everyone into the ground. From turn 3 he had his Atali, so that's without Jeweled Lotus, that's without Mana Crypt, and still managed to get the Dorks out and the Land Auras, and I don't think he even had a Sol Ring. He just got his commander out on turn 3 and then kept flickering it and getting loads of value offers and stealing all the removal, and just nice and obnoxious, you know. So even with these cards banned, it happened on the same day, seeing an obnoxious player like that, and these are just the type of players that you're going to get on Magic Online. So I would change my tune a little bit for a ban list and keep it on Magic Online, but I appreciate the majority of people don't play on there. So I am strictly talking about paper, where most people play, when I talk about my abolishing of the ban list. And I don't know, I kind of think about things with a social conscience. I don't think about things like this from my own personal my own personal gains or benefits. It just seems scummy. I don't know what else to say about it. It's there's something fishy about it, and just the timing of it, the convenience of it for Wizards. Like, let's see, to prove the point of whether the Rules Committee work in tandem with Wizards of the Coast and do a lot of secret little whispers side to side about things. Let's see if a set releases next year with a Mana Crypt in it in the card pool, or let's see if Jeweled Lotus gets released in a set. Let's see if the Rules Committee have totally blindsided Wizards of the Coast as well. Time will tell on that also, and I guarantee that we will not see any of those cards in future sets, very conveniently.